The beginning of my story does not start with success. It starts with a sentence I will never forget. Know your place, Emily. Women like you do not build companies. Those words came from my husband, the man I once believed would walk beside me for life. His name was David Grant, and the night he said those words, the air in our small dining room felt heavy enough to choke me. I remember the way the lamp above our table flickered, the sound of the rain hitting the window, the smell of burnt toast because he always insisted on cooking, even though he never learned how. But the clearest memory was the way he looked at me. Not like a partner, not like someone he respected, not like someone capable, but like a woman who should stay small. It happened after dinner. I had finally built the courage to show him my idea, a small leadership consulting concept designed for local businesses. I had worked on the plan for 6 months, in secret, during late nights, during weekends, during moments. When he fell asleep with the TV volume too loud, it was mine, my thought, my chance, my life. I placed the printed pages on the table between us. David lifted his eyebrow the way he always did when he was already judging something he had not even read. "What is this, Emily?" My voice shook when I said, "My business idea." He picked up the papers, flipped through them without care. He glanced at the numbers, at the structure, at the model, then tossed them back onto the table as if they meant nothing. "You spent 6 months on this. For what you should know your place. Emily, women like you do not run companies. Let the men handle real work." The sentence hit me like a cold slap. I sat still, not breathing, not blinking, trying to understand if he actually believed what he said, or if he simply wanted to break something inside me. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said, "Do not embarrass yourself or me. Stick to normal things." Then he walked out, leaving me alone at the table, with my papers, my dream, and a heart breaking slowly, quietly, silently. I picked up the pages he had thrown, smoothed the wrinkles, held them against my chest, and felt the weight of every word he used to keep me small. I whispered to myself, "Is this really my place?" The room answered with silence. That night I lay awake on the couch because I could not bear sleeping next to him, not when his words echoed so loudly inside my head. "Know your place, know your place. Know your place." The sentence became a drumbeat, a poison, a challenge. But pain has a strange power. It either destroys you or rebuilds you. I sat up slowly, pulled my laptop onto my knees, opened my document, and read my idea again, line by line, plan by plan. And something inside me shifted, a spark, a small one, but strong and bright and stubborn. I whispered, "I will make this work, not because he believes in me, but because he does not." The rain outside poured harder, tapping against the windows like a steady applause for a decision I had not fully understood yet, a decision that would shape my future. The next morning, David walked into the kitchen with his usual arrogance. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, his ego. He said, "Forget last night, you get emotional. You will thank me one day. Thank him for crushing me, for shrinking me, for controlling me." I watched him walk out the door, and I realized something. He would never respect my dreams. He would only respect the results. So I started quietly, carefully, secretly. I built my business during the hours he was gone. I studied everything. Marketing, leadership, systems, contracts, branding, business structure. I worked like a shadow, moving silently, growing quietly, becoming someone stronger. 3 months later, I landed my first client, a small team of 10. Not much money, but proof I could do it. When I cashed my first payment, I felt something powerful. I felt my place, and it was nowhere near where David wanted me to stay. I hid the income, saved every dollar, invested in better branding, better tools, better preparation. David remained blind to all of it because he did not think I was capable of anything. He ignored my laptop, my notebooks, my progress, my change. He never asked questions because he assumed I had nothing worth asking about. But I kept building, brick by brick, idea by idea, client by client. And the more I grew, the more I stayed silent, not because I feared him, but because I wanted him to meet the version of me he thought could never exist, the version who would one day build a $72 million company, the version who would one day sit across from him in a boardroom with lawyers, with contracts, with power, and decide his future. That version of me was rising quietly inside my chest, and he had no idea. The next few months of my life felt like watching two different movies playing side by side. One movie was the life David thought I lived, quiet, unimportant routine, predictable. The other movie was the life I was actually building, growing, learning, risking, becoming. And every day I felt those two worlds pulling farther apart. David woke early every morning, drank the same bitter black coffee, tied the same dark tie, and left the apartment with the same tired sigh. He never once asked, "What are you working on? How is your day? Do you need support? What are your goals?" Not even once. Instead, he lived in a world where he believed women belonged in the background. A world where he thought he had the right to define my limits. A world where he assumed my dreams were harmless fantasies. That belief of his became my greatest advantage, because it meant he never saw my rise coming. Every morning, when he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the same table where he had thrown my business plan, the same table where he told me to know my place, the same table where my heart broke and rebuilt in the same night. I turned that table into my battlefield. My first client had gone surprisingly well. I worked harder than ever before, listened, analyzed, created solutions, led meetings, improved communication systems. They loved my work. A week later, I received an email. Another small business wanted my help, then another, and another. Each new client was like a quiet victory, proof that my ideas were strong, even if my husband thought I was weak. But success never comes easy. The early mornings became late nights, the spreadsheets became longer, the documents became heavier, the questions became harder. And still, I worked in silence. On the nights David came home early, I hid my documents quickly, minimized windows, closed tabs, shut notebooks, because I did not want him to breathe doubt into something I was still building. He always walked in with the same tone, one that pushed the air out of the room. "Emily, why is there no dinner? Emily, why are you always on that laptop, Emily? Are you doing something important or just wasting time again?" I would look at him and say, "It is work." And without fail, he would laugh. Every single time, "Work your laptop is a hobby." Then he would walk past me, never thinking for a second that the woman he dismissed was building something that would one day decide his future. My clients grew from 10-person teams to 30 to 50 to entire departments needing restructuring, guidance, leadership. People liked the way I worked, calm, clear, honest, practical. And unlike David, they listened when I spoke. They valued my ideas. They paid for my mind, not my silence. Within a year, I had 27 clients, a waiting list, and an income that could cover more than just bills. But I hid it. Every dollar, every win, every milestone, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Because the best revenge is not shouting your success. It is letting it walk quietly beside you until the day the world sees it, and the person who doubted you cannot deny it anymore. During this time, David grew more comfortable, more confident, more blind. Every time I picked up my laptop, he rolled his eyes. "You should relax. Women do not need to work this hard. I am the one who takes care of our future." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because he had no idea I was already taking care of mine, and soon I would no longer take care of his. Halfway through that year, I made a decision that would change the path of my life. I booked a booth at a business, Leadership Expo. It was not cheap, not small, not simple, but I wanted people to see me, not the quiet girl David believed I was, but the leader I was becoming. I created brochures, printed cards, designed a small banner, and wrote a speech, a real, professional speech about modern leadership and company culture systems. The night before the event, I packed my materials in the living room. David walked in and stared, confused, judging, skeptical. "What is all this?" My heart beat fast, but my voice stayed calm. "My work," he frowned. "Since when is this real enough for events, Emily? This is ridiculous." I calmly zipped my bag and said, "I am doing it anyway." He stepped closer, angry, trying to regain control. "Know your place. Emily, women do not belong on business stages." And that was the exact moment my heart detached from him completely. Not with hate, not with rage, just with truth. This man cannot go with me where I am going. The next morning, I left before he woke up, caught a taxi, arrived at the expo center, my hands trembling, my stomach tight. But when I stepped inside and saw the lights, the booths, the energy, the ambition, something inside me finally felt at home. I stood at my small booth, alone, terrified, excited. At first, people walked past without noticing. But then a man in a gray suit approached, picked up my brochure. "Read it carefully," he asked. "Did you write this?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. Even though my hands were shaking, he nodded. "This is good, really good." Turns out he worked for a large corporation, a corporation with over 1,200 employees. He listened to my ideas, asked questions, took notes. By the end of the conversation, he handed me his card. "We need someone like you. Let us schedule a meeting." My chest filled with something warm, something strong, something I had not felt in years. Validation. From that moment, my booth became crowded. People came, listened, asked, requested consultations. I walked out of that expo with 5 major clients and 7 pending contracts. It was the turning point of my career. The moment I stepped out from the faint shadow of my marriage into the bright light of my own identity. When I returned home, David was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, face tight with irritation. He asked, "Where were you all day?" I looked at a man who thought he could decide the shape of my future, a man who believed I had no place in the business world, a man who had no idea how small he looked. From the height I was climbing, I simply said, "Working." He shook his head. "Women do not work like that." Stop pretending. I walked past him without answering, because one day, very soon, he would see exactly what kind of work I did. He would see the empire I was building, quietly, strategically, an empire worth $72 million. And when the time came, he would not be the one deciding my place. My company would be the one deciding his future. The months after the business expo felt like stepping into a world I once thought belonged only to other people. Important people, confident people, people who were allowed to dream, people who were allowed to lead. But suddenly, I was one of them. Not because someone gave me permission, but because I created my own doorway. The 5 clients I gained at the expo pulled me into a different level of work. I was no longer helping small teams of 10 or 20 people. Now I was consulting real companies, real leaders, real budgets, real challenges. For the first time, I felt like the person I always knew I could be, even when David refused to see it. But the higher I climbed, the more he tried to pull me down. One evening, I came home exhausted from a full day of meetings. My bag was heavy with contracts and notebooks. My head felt full. My voice was tired. I opened the apartment door quietly. David was on the couch, not watching TV, not playing games, just waiting. His arms crossed, his jaw tight, a look I recognized too well. He said, "Where were you all day?" Again, I placed my bag down and said calmly, "I told you, I had meetings." He scoffed, "You are lying. No one meets you for business, Emily. Stop pretending. You look ridiculous." There was a time when his words would have broken me, made my hands shake, made my heart hurt, made my voice small. But now his words felt like distant echoes in a world I had already stepped out of. I simply walked past him and said, "I am tired. I need to rest." He followed me into the kitchen, his tone rising, his frustration growing. "Emily, a wife's place is at home, not running around like some big important person." I turned slowly, looked him in the eyes, and replied, "My place is wherever I choose to build it." He froze, because he had never heard that version of me before, and it scared him. From that night on, something shifted between us. A quiet battle began, one he would never win. My work grew even faster. My name began spreading quietly through referrals. People told their friends, their colleagues, their directors. Soon I was booked months in advance. Companies were willing to wait for me, pay higher fees, travel to my office, take notes on everything I said. The woman David told to know her place now advised people who led entire departments. The irony was sharp and delicious. Every morning before he left for work, I noticed new signs of insecurity in him. He would ask, "Why do you dress so professionally? Who are you meeting? Why are you so busy? Why do people email you all the time? Sometimes he stared at my laptop like he wanted to understand. How did she do this? When did she become this? Was she always this? Yes, I was always this. He just never paid attention. Then came the moment I could no longer hide anything. It was a Friday morning, the kind of morning where the sunlight seems to rise louder than usual, bright, clear, direct. I was preparing for a major meeting with one of the biggest clients I had ever landed. I wore a soft cream blazer, pinned my hair neatly, held my notes in a folder, and stood near the mirror practicing lines. David walked into the room, stopped, and stared. "What are you wearing? Where are you going?" I said. "A leadership meeting," he laughed. "A meeting with who?" "Some small little business again, Emily." "Why are you so desperate to pretend?" I took a slow breath, my patience thinning, my resolve strengthening. I said, "It is not a small business. It is a corporation with more than 1,000 employees, and they hired me to lead the restructuring." For a moment, his face lost all color, like he had seen something he was never supposed to see. "You are joking," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, I am not." He stepped closer, angry, jealous, shaken. "How did you do that? How could they choose you? What did you tell them?" I held his gaze. "The truth. I told them the truth, and they believed me. Because I know what I am doing." He clenched his jaw, his pride cracking like a thin shell. "You are acting like you are above me," I replied. "No, I am acting like the person you never believed I could be." He did not speak after that. He simply stood there, stunned, silent, watching me walk past him, strong, clear, unapologetic. The meeting that day changed my life. Not because it brought more clients, not because it raised my income, but because it showed me something painful and beautiful at the same time. I did not need David, not for confidence, not for permission, not for guidance, not for validation. I had built my worth with my own hands, with my own mind, with my own courage. After that day, the gap between us widened, not in anger, but in reality. He stayed where he was. I moved forward. He kept shrinking. I kept rising. He kept doubting. I kept proving him wrong without even trying. 3 months later, my income surpassed his yearly salary, then doubled it, then tripled it. But I did not brag. I did not announce it. I did not place it in front of him, because success is most powerful when it is quiet, still, unshakable. One evening, while I was preparing a proposal in the kitchen, David stood behind me and asked, "Do you still know your place?" I turned slowly, looked at him without flinching, and said, "Yes, my place is wherever I build my future." He swallowed, his voice suddenly small. "Then where does that leave me?" I answered gently. "But honestly, that depends on the man you choose to be, because I will not shrink again." That sentence, that truth, cut deeper than anything I had ever said to him. It was the beginning of the end and the beginning of my rise, a rise that would one day build a $72 million company, a rise that would one day place me in power, a rise that would one day decide his future, not him deciding mine. There comes a point in every person's life when the truth becomes too loud to ignore. For me, that moment arrived quietly one late evening while I was finishing up client proposals at our dining table. For David, the truth arrived like a punch he never prepared for. By this time, my consulting business was no longer a small side project, no longer something I worked on between house chores, no longer something I could hide behind, minimize tabs and closed notebooks. It had become a full operation. Clients across states, contracts that filled folders, a virtual assistant, a growing reputation, and a bank account David had no idea existed. I was standing at the edge of the life I once dreamed of, and he was still standing at the edge of the one he assumed I would never leave. It began on a Wednesday morning. I woke early, showered, dressed professionally, and prepared for a presentation that would secure my largest contract yet. The building I was meeting in was tall, glass windows, marble floors, echoing hallways. When I stepped inside, security greeted me by name, led me to the boardroom. When I walked into the room, executives shook my hand, listened to every word, took notes, asked questions. In that room, my voice mattered, my ideas mattered, my presence mattered, and when I walked out, 1 hour later, I had a deal worth a 7-figure yearly contract. I covered my mouth, leaning against a hallway wall, feeling something warm build in my chest. Pride, Real pride, the kind no one can give you, the kind no one can take away. For the first time, I realized this is who I was always meant to be. I got home later than usual that evening, and the moment I opened the apartment door, I could feel David's energy, tight, tense, angry, like he had been waiting for me. He was sitting on the couch, arms folded, staring at the front door like he had been rehearsing a speech. "Where were you?" I placed my bag down, careful, calm, not because I feared him, but because I no longer needed his approval. I said, "Working." He stood up, walked closer, his voice sharp. "Working where? Why are you dressed like that? Why do you come home late? Who are you meeting? Who do you think you are?" I looked at him, a man who believed a woman should stay small, stay silent, stay soft, stay hidden. And I realized he was not just intimidated, he was threatened. I answered, "I met with executives today." He blinked twice, confused, disbelieving. For what? A speech, a workshop, a contract? He laughed, a short, cruel laugh, the kind he always used to make me feel ridiculous. "Executives do not meet people like you. You are lying." I stepped closer, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "Then maybe you never knew who I was." For the first time in our marriage, he stayed silent. Not because he respected me, but because he finally felt something he never imagined he would feel around me. Inferior. Over the next few weeks, my life moved in. Fast forward, I was invited to speak at a leadership conference. My video from the event went viral online. Companies reached out to hire me, people quoted my lines, shared my posts, discussed my methods. Every day, my inbox filled with opportunities, partnerships, interviews, requests. I began to appear on articles, podcasts, business pages, panels. People started calling me Emily Grant, founder of Grant Leadership Solutions. They talked about my work with admiration, with respect, with interest. Meanwhile, David's world stayed small, shrinking, darkening. He came home every day with more complaints. Work was stressful, people were rude, his boss was difficult, his coworkers were lazy. He never changed, he only blamed. And every time he watched me open my laptop, every time he watched me speak with purpose, every time he saw me growing, his resentment grew. Not because I was doing something wrong, but because I was doing something he never believed I could. One night I returned home after a late business dinner, the kind where important contracts are discussed over warm lighting and quiet music. I walked in, hung my coat, placed my bag by the wall, and found David sitting at the table, my documents spread out in front of him. He had opened my drawers, my folders, my notebooks. He stared at me, his face pale, his hands shaking with anger. "Emily," how long I froze, not with fear, but with realization. The secret was out. "How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been making this money? How long have you been planning this?" He stepped closer, breathing heavily. "You are my wife. You should tell me everything. I am the man. I run the house." I replied, "No, David, you run nothing here, not anymore." His face twisted. He moved back like my words had hit him physically. He whispered, "You changed." I looked around the apartment, the same apartment where he silenced me, the same apartment where he dismissed my dreams, the same apartment where I rebuilt myself quietly. And I answered, "No, I finally became myself." From that night forward, David was different, not supportive, not encouraging, but desperate. He began asking questions, too many questions. "How much are you earning? How big is your business? Do you think you will replace me? Are you going to leave me?" It was strange, seeing a man who once acted like a king, now standing in front of me, small, unsure, afraid. I did not hate him, I did not pity him. I simply recognized the truth. He was a man who built his praise, power on one thing, my silence. When I stopped being silent, he lost everything he built. One Friday afternoon, a man named James Sterling walked into my office. He was one of the most respected business investors in the state, tall, sharp, focused. He said, "Emily, I have been following your work and I want to help scale your company nationwide." I blinked, barely breathing. Nationwide, my consulting company. Across the country, I felt my throat tighten, my eyes warm. This was the moment, a real moment. The moment my life stepped into a place David could never reach. James sat down, showed me numbers, charts, projections, opportunities. Then he said, "Your company can be worth $70 million within a few years." I whispered, "70 million. He smiled. Yes, if you let us partner with you. I signed the partnership 2 days later. My company was now valued at $72 million. The number did not feel real. I sat in my office chair staring at the contract. Breathing slowly, feeling my life shift, I whispered, "You did it. You really did it." That evening, I walked into the apartment. David stood in the hallway. He asked, "Where have you been?" I looked at him, a man who tried to control my story, tell me my place, shrink my voice, and calmly, without shaking, I said, "Building a company worth $72 million. He froze, his mouth slightly open, his eyes empty, his voice gone. I walked past him and added, "Now I decide the future, not you." It was the moment he finally understood. He never controlled me. He only slowed me down. And now, even his future would depend on the woman he tried to silence. The morning after I told David about the $72 million valuation, the apartment felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just heavier. Like the walls themselves finally understood that the power in this home had shifted permanently. I woke early, showered, dressed in a soft navy blazer, and walked into the kitchen. David was already there, sitting at the table, staring at his hands, the same table where he once threw my business plan, the same table where he told me to know my place. But everything had changed. Now he was the one quiet. Now he was the one unsure. Now he was the one wondering where he belonged. He lifted his eyes slowly when I sat across from him. He looked smaller, older, almost fragile. "Emily, can we talk?" I remained calm. "Yes." He exhaled hard, running a hand through his messy hair. "I messed up. I treated you horribly. I thought I was protecting us, but really, I was protecting my pride." He swallowed. Painfully, "I was wrong," I nodded. "Once. Not cruelly, not kindly, just honestly, David. You did not believe in me, not even once." He blinked, eyes shining, but not with tears, more like shame. "I know." His voice cracked, "But you left me behind. I do not know who you are anymore." For the first time in years, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no guilt, just truth. I said, "I became the woman you tried to stop." He closed his eyes. As if the words were too sharp to hold, I left the apartment and headed to my office. The building was alive. People walked fast. Phones rang. Screens glowed. My team waited for me, holding folders, plans, proposals. Julia, my operations lead, walked over. "Emily, the board wants to meet today. It is important." I nodded. "Let us go." We stepped into the large conference room, tall windows, glass walls, a long, polished table, the kind of room I once believed belonged only to men like David. But now here I was, at the head of the table, because this room belonged to leaders, not genders. The board began the meeting. They congratulated me on the valuation, the growth, the expansion. Then the chairman said something that would shape the rest of my story. "Emily, we want to offer you the position of Chief Executive Director, full authority, full decision-making power, total control of your branches." My heart raced, my breath caught. This was not just success, this was power, real power. Built from the ground up, I accepted. With steady hands, with a strong voice, with a heart that remembered every moment David told me, "You cannot, you should not, you will fail." After the meeting, Julia tapped my arm gently. "Emily, one more thing." She handed me a folder. Inside it was a name I recognized immediately, David Grant, my husband. The folder contained records, work, files, and a note from the hiring department. He applied for a job at my company. For the financial planning team, I stared at the papers, the irony washing over me like warm sunlight. David, the man who told me to know my place, was now asking me for one. Julia said carefully. "We can reject it quietly or consider it. You have the final word. You lead this company." I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, just realization. Life had completed a perfect circle. I closed the folder, my mind steady. I said, "Schedule an interview." Julia blinked. "You want to meet him?" "Yes," I said, "but professionally, not personally." 2 days later, David walked into the lobby of my company building, wearing a freshly ironed shirt, hair combed, resume in hand. For the first time, he did not enter a room like a king. He entered like a man who understood what it felt like to lose everything. He did not know I would be in the interview. He thought it would be someone from HR. Julia led him into a bright meeting room. He entered by walked in confidently at first, then stopped frozen. When he saw me sitting on the other side of the table, Emily, his voice broke. Almost instantly I nodded. "Hello, David, please sit." He sat slowly, hands shaking, eyes confused, heart pounding so loud I could almost hear it. He whispered, "You work here." I met his eyes. "I do more than work here. I own this. I built this. I lead this." Shock washed over his face. Shock mixed with pride, regret, humility, fear. He tried to speak, but words failed him. I opened the folder in front of me. David Grant, applying for financial planning support. He swallowed hard. "Emily, please, this is not what you think. I did not, I need a job." I nodded. Professional, sharp, calm. "Tell me, why do you want to work here, at my company?" His eyes softened, his voice trembling. "Because this is the only place where someone truly succeeded, the way I always wished I could, and I know I do not deserve it, but I want to be part of something good, something successful, something honest." I leaned back, studying him. "The man I once married, the man who once told me to stay small," he continued. "Emily, I am sorry. Deeply, truly I am sorry for everything I said, everything I did, everything I broke. I was wrong. You were right," his voice cracked again. "You were always more capable than me. I was just too proud to admit it." Silence filled the room, thick, real, heavy. Then I said, "David, you once tried to decide my place, but now I decide yours." He looked down, tears hitting the table, quiet, uncontrolled, human. I took a slow breath, remembered every moment, every insult, every dismissal, every time he made me small. Then I said, "I will give you the job, but not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, because I know what it means to rise alone, to rebuild from nothing, to fight against someone who doubts you. I will give you a chance." His head dropped, his hands shook, his voice cracked. "Thank you," but I added, firm, unshakable. "You will be treated like every other employee. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no excuses. You answer to the managers, not to me. Your performance decides your future, not our past." He nodded, more serious than I had ever seen him. "I understand." When he walked out of the room, I felt a wave rush through me, a wave of closure, a wave of power, a wave of peace. He once tried to seal my future, but now my $72 million company decided. His months passed. He worked quietly, humbly, respectfully. For the first time in our marriage, he listened, he learned, he evolved, not toward winning me back, but toward rebuilding himself. And I stepped fully into the life I carved from stone, leading teams, building branches, speaking at conferences, signing million-dollar deals. The world saw me. The world believed in me. The world trusted me. I did not need to be the woman he wanted. I became the woman I was destined to be. One evening, months later, I stood in my office alone, lights dim, city glowing below me. I whispered to myself, "He told me to know my place, but I chose to create it, and now my place was at the top."